Hi folks, I'm taking another trip down memory lane with a second Dead Mall video. Or perhaps Fading Mall would be a more accurate and kinder description. This time I'm at Lakeshore Mall in Gainesville, Georgia. Lakeshore is named for its proximity to Lake Sidney Lanier, and it is a small mall by today's mall standards. But for its time, when it was built in 1970, it was about average for a community of this size. And it actually represents a good example of design features that were common to malls that were built during this era. One of those design features is detached buildings separate from the actual mall. Put on your Sunday best, kids, we're going to Sears. Somebody out there tell me you remember when Sears was considered fancy shopping. I know it was when I was growing up. Having a Sears employee smile at me as we wandered through there at Christmas was like getting presented with a bottle of free water at Jared's. Back there in the background you see what appears to be an old Sears tire and service center, now a Firestone. My family and I used to make it a point to visit this mall, especially during the holiday season. It was always so nicely decorated, and there was an intimacy in the decor back then that seems to be lacking these days. It seems to be more corporate and slick at the holiday seasons at malls these days. Sears did not want Mike to see very far in, but I was not to be deterred. There's other ways to look in. Tell me, are any of you old enough to remember when the Sears Christmas catalog was like having access to Santa's hard drive? This parking lot used to be full at this time of the day, but as you see, it's pretty much deserted here from this angle. This was an employee parking lot, by the way. Not much happening here now except this pickup truck for charity. I finally found another way to get a peek inside Sears on the other side of the building at the merchandise pickup. Not a whole lot to see back here, but I do appreciate the 1970s vibe this area gives off. If you're around my age, you remember this kind of area. One of the more populated parts of the mall as you get toward Belk's. Belk's is one of the anchors here now, and Dick's Sporting Goods being one of the others. They do also have a Books A Million. You see here chained off one of the exits. You used to have an entrance to the mall and then you had this exit, but now it's not really necessary. And as I drove all around the mall, I found that these exits were all chained off, and so the entrances are also now the exits. You see at the rear of Belk's, they have this open area pretty well secured, which is probably a good idea considering how deserted the parking lot is back here. JCPenney was once a retail juggernaut in the United States. But like many department stores, it's had trouble in recent years. My wife Tammy loves JCPenney still. Can see the parking lot could use a little work. This is pretty common all around the parking lot. I drove all around this building and checked the whole area out, and it's pitted up in many places. A little closer view of the JCPenney store. The facade could use some work here too. I imagine they would just tear all this out and start from scratch if they were going to do anything with the store. It was pretty in its time though. Nice little outside entrance. It had its own mall entrance as well. This one I could actually see right up into the store when I pressed my camera up against the glass. I remember shopping in this store, folks. I really enjoyed it. Tammy loves JCPenney's, and I remember we bought one of our favorite Halloween decorations of all time from this JCPenney, a little fiber optic pumpkin, and we kept that thing from years, and we always remembered the shopping trip here when we got it. Coming up on one of the main entrances to the mall. Imagine this place in 1985, folks, on a Saturday afternoon. It would have been hopping. Young and old alike, coming together as a community at the Temple of Retail. It has been a few years since I've been here, actually, and I was pleasantly surprised to see this fountain we're coming up on here in the middle of the mall still working. Sometimes in these older malls you'll see these water features turned off to save electricity, but they got this one still running. Sweet. Jewelry stores seem to do pretty well in these fading malls, and so do toy stores for some reason. Perhaps here in the US especially, we've come to associate enclosed malls with luxury items. There's a kiosk available for lease, a lot of for lease signs you'll notice coming up over the course of this video. I choose to find that hopeful. At least they're not giving up. If your idea of a fun time is sitting at home in your easy chair and watching YouTube videos of abandoned places, perhaps this is the place for you. That is a lot of space for lease there. An entrepreneur could chase some pretty big dreams. Coming up now on one of the few major chain stores still occupying space in this enclosed mall, Books A Million. I never pass a bookstore without going in. I went in this one and I've been in it many times in the past. I can tell you this is a pretty good Books A Million. I recommend it if you're in the area and you're a book lover. Here's the interior entrance to JCPenney's. We all remember these mall entrances to these main stores. I do remember a time when department stores were truly department stores. They would be divided into their own little areas. You'd feel like you were in a separate place. Now it's more of an open floor plan. And those places we refer to as department stores these days. Hair salon, I noticed it looked like it was occupied, but on this day when it should have been busy, there was no one there and the gate was closed. It does look like they do offer a total service here, not just the hair, perhaps makeup, and maybe even preparing your gown for the prom or for the wedding. An inclusive service. That seems like a great idea. I wonder why it's not open. One would think Lakeshore to be an ideal location to open a retail business. Most of the major U.S. chain stores are still located nearby in its sprawl. A lot of great places to eat in this part of town, too. There are some folks reflected in the glass taking advantage of the abandoned places reality experience at Lakeshore Mall. Looks comfy. Still a lot of mall walking going on here at this mall. It's a good place for it, short laps. It's encouraging, I think, to see how tidy they're keeping these spaces for lease. Starting to head now back toward the center of the mall. This is not a big mall by today's mall standards, but again, for the community that it serves and for its time, it's about average size. The Belk's there is open. Belk's being one of only 2 or 3 stores that are probably paying most of the bills for this facility. Here's a nice little space for a small store. I think a boutique would fit nicely in there. And this was the Magic gift shop. I guess it just didn't have enough magic. Since I really began paying attention to abandoned retail spaces, I've noticed that some of them will cover up their windows or their doors so you can't see in. I know there's business reasons, but it almost seems like a kind of modesty. I found this carousel interesting at second glance. At first glance, it looks like a unique interpretation of Kipling's Jungle Book. There's Kaa, there's Baloo, but wait, Simba. Looks like a Disney Cinematic Universe crossover. There's Mowgli, the man cub. One of King Louie's boys. And a wolf cub. This is a neat little quarter carousel. I don't think I've ever seen this design before. That elephant's pretty. I hope it's still a quarter to ride. I like to think that it is. Don't forget Bagheera. Everyone belongs at Bath and Body Works. Or they did. You know what's interesting about this place? As I was standing outside, loitering in front of this old Bath and Body Works store, the smell, that Bath and Body Works smell, still permeates the air all around it. The past truly does linger right here in this little corner at the midway point of the mall. Now continuing down the other half of the mall, and we're greeted right out of hand with another empty store. You'll notice the folks on the cleanup crew behind me as I was panning forward and as I panned back. The folks working at Lakeshore kept a watchful eye on me the whole time I was there. I think they made me as soon as I walked in the building and started shooting. Security was also aware of my presence, but they kept a pretty good distance. I, of course, wasn't being disruptive, and I obviously didn't take anything that didn't belong to me. But were I they, and saw me walking around with a camera, I'd probably keep a close eye on me too. Some of the stores are still open. Not too much business on this day. It's interesting that the Belks actually has 2 locations in this mall. I'm not so sure I would keep that quote up there in this mall. Now right here, you won't see it, but shortly after I filmed this little piece is when security started taking an especially keen interest in my presence. But by this time I was in the home stretch. Yet another bit of modesty there, covering up the empty interior, but leaving just a little bit of a peek, teasing us with what's to come. You can always count on nail studios to be open. In my amateurish and completely unsolicited opinion, I don't think anyone can blame the usual suspects for the decline of Lakeshore Mall. I don't think Amazon is behind it, or Walmart, or any of the other big box stores. I believe this is simply a case of Atlanta's influence spreading further north outside the perimeter. One just doesn't have to drive as far from Gainesville anymore to find newer and shinier. The Mall of Georgia is only a couple of exits down I-85, and Sugarloaf Mills is only a couple beyond that. Lakeshore just seems a bit small and dated compared to those newer stores. I wonder what this was. I like the astronaut mural on the wall. Almost back to the center of this mall where we came in. Those 2 ladies up in front of me, when I was able to overhear bits of their conversation, it was about this mall. They were remembering the way it was. Pretty much the same thing I was doing, albeit silently. As we head back out to the parking lot. Thank you to all the folks that stuck around here to the end of this video. I can only assume that at least some of you, like myself, grew up in the age of the mall in America. Maybe some of you remember meeting your friends on Saturday night at your local mall. Maybe that was the place where you held hands for the first time or shared your first kiss. Maybe those milestones for you took place in a mall, something like Lakeshore. Until we meet again, folks, thanks.